Hello everyone, and welcome to a special edition of Tales from the Typecase. My name's Greg Smith. I'm the proprietor of Blind Pig Press and also your host for this Tiptoe Through the Typecase. Or really, it is a tiptoe through the galley tray tonight. This font cannot be contained by a typecase. We are looking at, and yes, I am not mistaken when I say 96 point Sans Serif No. 6. So that's a large font. Not really large in terms of the size. It is an incomplete font, but it is a large font. And we've used it a couple times over the years as well. So come on along and we'll have a look at 96 point Sans Serif No. 6. I don't want this to be too much of a shock to you folks, but sometimes at Blind Pig Press, we keep type in what are called galley racks. And it's usually larger fonts of type or larger type sizes. And also it may be, in this case, a typeface where we only have uppercase letters, and it fits really neatly into a galley tray. We do have a great number of fonts like this that we have in galley trays, and the overall thing itself is a galley rack. And I'm going to pull this out a little carefully here. But what we have is, believe it or not, 96 point Sans Serif No. 6. So this is a font that has been sort of left standing for a while. It's a little bit dirty, but we're going to bring it out and we're going to set it on top of a typecase so we can photograph it a little better, but we're going to have a look at it. So here we have our font. Again, 96 point Sans Serif No. 6. Again, another sort of Bob Dylan song title for a font. And truth be told, I went in and sort of tidied it up a little bit so you could see it better. But we've had it hanging around for quite a while. I was looking for a typeface to use on a notebook that I was printing. And when I pulled it out, the first thing I noticed, and again, this is sort of the first time I noticed it, was the uppercase G. And the uppercase G is very unusual. And I think I probably always thought that this was, one of your sort of bog standard grotesque sans serifs. I thought it was probably Venus or something like that. And I probably also always, when I looked at it, thought that this was a C, because I would pull the galley tray out just a little bit and look at it and then push it back in. And for whatever reason, I noticed the G, and you'll probably notice that the G is unusual because it does not have a crossbar on it. And that sort of led me down a little bit of a research, and I'm doing air quotes when I say research, so research. I went to the interwebs, of course, to try and figure out what this was. If we have a look at the C and the G side by side, you'll see the difference there. So again, this sort of led me down my typographic research rabbit hole. And it was quite difficult because there aren't many fonts that are like this digitally that have the no crossbar. But I was sort of figuring that it was a British font because of the pound symbol. We don't really use that a lot in Canada. So it sort of narrowed it down. And when we have a look at the font itself close up, this is the first time on a episode of Tales from the Typecase that we have a pin mark on a font. So that was quite exciting as well. So for this font, unfortunately, W. Jasbert Pincus has let us down. You'll see we were looking at some grotesque fonts from Stevenson and Blake, but again, you'll notice that they all have the crossbar on the G. And also, we're going to be coming back and at some point looking at grotesque number 9, number 9, number 9. And also over here, we have some grotesques that don't really fit the bill. Again, they all have the crossbar on the G. So there's a lot of different grotesques, and all of them from Stevenson and Blake and or monotype. We also saw the grotesque condensed titling, which gave us hope, but again, our hopes were dashed. So we were a bit stymied, to use another typographic pun here, but we went to the interwebs and we found, as you'll see here, in the, I believe, 1926 catalog of Miller and Richard type founders from Edinburgh and London, we found in the catalog here, of course, the Sans Serif No. 6. And again, I really can't figure out the no crossbar G. It really is a puzzler. But there we have it. So let's take a closer look at the font itself. So here we have Sans Serif No. 6 from Miller and Richard. And this is, again, the G that first caught my eye. And you'll see the G that first caught my eye. Anyways, you can see the little foot here at the bottom of the G, or the little curve there. And if we flip it over, you can see here as well that we have the name Richard and a PT. So a PT, I would imagine that they were going to cast in there the point size, but they don't seem to. Maybe it's another foundry that I'm just not aware of. We can also put the line gauge on it. You'll see that it is a beautiful 8 picas tall. So 96 full points of grotesque goodness. So on the other side as well, so that's that side, and the casting is also, it says the same thing on the other side. So Miller and Richard were bought by Stevenson Blake in the early part of the 1950s, I believe. So I'm not sure if this is a late manifestation of the Miller and Richard font, or maybe Richard went off on their own and just left Miller behind. But the other thing that's interesting is because it's such a large font and it is very heavy, even that small tray is quite heavy. We weren't coming close to being injured today, but, we were worried about dropping the type. You'll see that some of the casting has been cut away here to reduce the weight. And also you can see the dressing on the bottom of the type itself. So it's almost like a little eye bar with some space cut in there to dress the bottom of the font. So quite an interesting, and all the letters are that way, so it's an interesting way of reducing the weight of the font. So we have some interesting letters here as well. So we have the G, we have the C isn't really interesting other than in relationship to the G. We have this J, which comes up quite a bit and quite high on the side here. And we have an A, and we have the Q. And the Q is really fascinating because of the point size. There is, and you can probably see it there is a kern on it. So this is hanging over the edge of the letter itself, the body of the casting. And you'll also notice that it's angled out, so it doesn't sit directly on another piece of type. Really interesting sort of construction of the kern itself. It's technically probably not even a kern because it's actually not hanging over one side or the other. It's hanging down the bottom. So it could sit over top. If I push it over here, you could actually set the type solid and have the bottom of the cue sort of supported by the other part of the casting. And they've also done that in a couple of other letters here. If we move this over and flop down the comma and the semicolon have the same thing going on here. Okay, and you'll see that that pin mark is in every piece of the type. So the other letters that are of interest here, get them back, is the pound. Again, we don't really see much of that outside of Canada or inside Canada. And again, you can see how much space is being taken away. If I flip the R over, you'll see there's different widths to this central supporting beam of the I-beam here. The R has sort of a modeled leg here, so it comes out with a little bit of a knee, and then there's just that little flick at the end of the leg or the foot. So that's interesting in that it's not a grotesque, Benton grotesque type of font. Usually they would have a straight leg. So again, it is coming, I believe, from what I can safely say is the British tradition. And we also have a very interesting numeral 3 here in that they're doing some visual correcting in this part of the 3. So you'll see it gets quite narrow as it goes across there and at the midpoint. And the 3 is quite a bit lighter than if I set it next to the R, you'll see that the 3 itself is quite a bit lighter in the stroke width overall. And the same with the punctuation. It gets a little thicker here with the question mark. But the interesting part for me was the amount of space in between the bottom of the question mark and the dot at the bottom, or the tittle, I guess. And you can see that the dot on the bottom is quite a bit larger than the stem at the vertical here. Also, if you look at the bracket here, it is thick. And I'm spelling that Thick. So this is quite thick here. And also you'll notice that the exclamation mark sort of follows along with the question mark with a small space there and a large tittle. And that leads me to talk to you about printing with this type. Because after I discovered what it was and, of course, how large it is, 96 points of loveliness, I wanted to use it. So I had a project that I was working on, and I was able to put it into use. So this is a cover for a notebook that I printed, Shut Up and Draw. So yeah, don't sit around doing nothing, just shut up and get drawing. And we use the 96 point Sans Serif number 6 for this. And you'll see that the D, the R, the A, and the W are, fairly sort of normal-ish, condensed sans serif grotesques. But it is this wonderful exclamation mark that really has me wondering what on earth was going on at Miller and Richard, that they came up with not only the cross-barless G, but also this fantastic exclamation mark. And it really does boggle the mind. I don't know if that was in a set of wood type, sort of, a Western style or a Tuscan style. I wouldn't really bat an eye at it. But in this case, you'll see that, it is quite a bit thinner than the others, or lighter in tone. But yeah, it really is baffling. So it's these little idiosyncrasies that really make a sort of fun look in the typecase. So we shall draw the curtain closed on a bit of an unusual episode of Tales from the Typecase, because there was really no typecase involved, just a rusty, sort of dirty, but not too smelly galley tray, and a really unusual and quite charming, but really unusual font. So that's 96 point Sans Serif number 6, and an interesting font, and really, again, sort of a quirky and unusual font. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're especially tickled, you could also send us things. You know, fall is pickling season. So there we go. Anyways, have a good night, and we'll see you next week.